everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today we're going to have another little rant, a tiny little rant about Obi-Wan Kenobi and some of the fandom reaction to this show that we've seen sort of evolving ever since episode 3. You know, of course, we have since had episode 4, which a lot of people liked and a lot of people didn't like. You know, and by the way, it is okay if you don't like this show. That's fine, people can have opinions, okay? And as fans, what do? We engage with each other, we talk about these opinions, we debate things. That is all perfectly okay. Alright, this is an entirely separate thing from all the other stuff that's happening with Moses Ingram and all that horrible things that are happening. So this is just about me engaging with other fans, okay? So here we go. This is, of course, talking about the Darth Vader scene at the end of episode 3. This is the scene where, as you can see on screen, he has Obi-Wan in the fire, and he's torturing him, and then he pushes him out of the fire, and then he tells the stormtroopers to grab Obi-Wan, and tells them to, like, alright, capture him, but then before he can do it, the stormtrooper gets shot, and then the fuel tank gets blasted open, and the fire spreads even larger, and then a droid comes and takes Obi-Wan to safety. Now, a lot of people, ever since that scene happened, and we are going to watch that scene, a lot of people since that scene happened, they've had all of their theories, including myself. Okay, my own theory personally was that, okay, well, there's no way off the planet, right? Because maybe they, you know, I think they locked down all the ports and the pilot died, so maybe there's no way off the planet, which of course ended up not being true, right? They did manage to get to that ship that the pilot had, so I mean, they knew where it was at the port, so I can conceivably take that, you know, I can use my imagination to draw that line, you know, in the logic. But a lot of people were like, no, he let Obi-Wan go because of this, or he's gonna track him, or this other thing, or, you know, like they were like desperately trying to make sense of this, to the point where they were like, if they don't make sense of this, it's out of Darth Vader's character to let him go. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, hold on, you're jumping to a lot of assumptions. First of all, we're assuming that he let him go, and what I mean by that is we're assuming he had a choice in that. So we're gonna watch the scene again, and really what I'm gonna be talking about is we seem to be at an age, and I think we've been here for a long time actually, where people don't want to let their imagination fill in the gaps anymore. You know, if there is something that is not explained to the audience, like point blank explained, said as dialogue, people will call it a plot hole, or they'll call it an inconsistency, or they can't, like, a lot of times people refuse to fathom anything outside of what is directly said line for line. So like Darth Vader, you know, again in quotes, letting Obi-Wan go, people refuse to like look at other possibilities. You know, they don't let their imagination run wild. They're like, if they didn't explain it, then it's just a plot hole. It's like, no, hold on. You know, or they'll call it lazy writing. You know, they'll be like, oh, they just needed X to happen, and so it was lazy writing. Which, look, I don't know how many professional writers are out there, or professional critics are out there, but the phrase lazy writing gets thrown around so much, and I have to ask, how easy do you think it is to write a TV show? You know, because a lot of people come out here and they'll find something that they assume, again, because they're not using their imaginations, they're assuming it's a logical inconsistency, and they are not doing any work on their part to you know, try to connect the dots in their mind. They then go like, well, you're just lazy, you didn't write it right, you know, because what, because they didn't explain it to your face. Anyways, we're gonna watch the scene, we're gonna pause it, and we're gonna talk more about this, and the grander point I'm trying to make here. And also, yes, this is a Star Wars Disney Plus scene, so I'm probably gonna have to like alter the sound or have no sound playing, or I don't know what I'm gonna have to do, honestly, because who knows how much of this Disney's gonna be like okay with me putting in the video. So we're gonna go ahead and just press play, and here we go. Okay, everyone's getting roasted alive. Darth Vader's there. He pushes him out, extinguishing most of the fire, right? Ooh, his arm's all burnt up. He can't move. He tells this stormtrooper, go get him, right? Stormtrooper's there, he gets blasted. And all the troopers turn and go like, whoa, where did that blaster come from? Darth Vader's looking around saying, where'd that come from? Another blaster bolt. She shoots the tank, the actual tank where the fuel was. And the fire, if you notice, is actually much bigger. I made this shot-for-shot comparison on Twitter. And within seconds of the explosion happening, the droid's already walking away. They don't show the droid leaving, but if you notice, the droid's gone already. So all these people are firing at a droid that is like pretty decently away already. There he goes. He's gone. So this idea that Vader could have done something, because Vader sits here and he doesn't move. You know, he's just like watching this happen. And a lot of people are upset because it's like, all right, we're going to go ahead and pause that. A lot of people are upset because they're like, why didn't Vader do X, Y, Z, A, B, C? You know, why didn't Vader do 10 million other things that they can think of? Because they're like, well, he has the Force and he's Darth Vader, so he can do this and he can do that and he can do this. And this is what I mean by people not letting their imaginations just like explain things anymore. They want it like told out, you know? There has to be a dialogue, plot heavy reason for him to have done this, you know? So let's get into this. Okay, well, first of all, you know, yes, the writers needed a way for Obi-Wan to escape this situation. And, you know, if you just had Obi-Wan get burnt by this fire and you have all this fuel spilled on the ground, the easiest, most logical way to separate them, thus giving Obi-Wan enough time to escape, is to have a giant explosion happen with all that fuel. And then Obi-Wan's able to be saved and he gets away, which is exactly what happens, right? Now, granted, the editing of the scene, okay, having Vader sit there and react to it while things are happening, it does look like, well, couldn't Vader have done this or that or the other thing? Well, here's the thing about that. Instead of asking, why didn't he do this, right? Well, no, I guess that is the right thing to ask. But it's instead of saying, oh, it's because it's a plot hole, and because it's lazy writing, because it's this. What we should be doing is using our imaginations as fans. You know, this is my rebuttal against those complaints. We should be using our imaginations as fans to fill in those logical gaps, okay? Because if the show's not going to spoon feed us something, then we can think about it and be like, okay, well, actually, let's go down the list of reasons why he would not have done those things, you know? So, for example, and I wrote some of these on Twitter. Number one, the explosion was larger and powered by much more fuel than it was the first time. Thus, it couldn't be snuffed out nearly as easily. You know, because if you know, as we just saw, Vader pushed Kenobi through that fuel, through the fire, and the fire went away. And it wasn't that much fire. In fact, here, I don't know how far we can actually rewind this here. I don't know how easy this is going to be. Disney Plus is kind of crappy when it comes to loading stuff. Alright, anyways, I made my point. My point is, the fire was much larger. You know, the fire was much more difficult to get through. It was actually being fueled, you know, it was for all intents and purposes, it was a gasoline fire. You know, which if you know anything between like, oh, this is a log fire with wood, or a gasoline fire, which one of those do you think is much more difficult to push out? Even if you're using the Force to push it, you know, you're just pushing it with air, you know? So there's one, right? And again, like, take your pick on which one of these is why he wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. Number two, the droid picked up Obi-Wan much faster in real time than the editing would imply, leaving Vader no real time to react to what is happening. You know, and again, that's just comes down to editing. You can say maybe it was sloppily edited. Maybe they wanted so many reaction shots of Vader as things were happening. They wanted the fire to show up, show Vader's face. The robot shows up, show Vader's face. The robot starts pulling Obi-Wan away, show Vader's face. You know, like, they keep on having these reaction shots because they want Vader, you know, they want like Vader's reaction to Kenobi getting away. You know what I mean? So maybe that made it actually seem as if it's taking much more time than it really did. So you can say, hey, they could trim up that editing. That way it seems like this is happening much faster. So honestly, I think that's one of the more likely things that happened, is that they just kept on wanting those reaction shots of Vader in the fire, because the fires are reflecting off of his lens, and it's a really cool shot. But they kept on wanting that, and you know, again, my God, look at Disney Plus. It's still loading. I don't know what's going on with Disney Plus. It's loading. Anyways, okay, so number 3. In that scene, I probably should have had subtitles up, but I didn't. You can go watch it for yourself. In that scene, we hear multiple stormtroopers in that scene yell that there's no way through or around, again implying that the explosion was larger than we see. Yeah, so you can go to a paused frame showing the fire, and yes, there's like a mountain of the fuel on one side, and there's a giant cliff on the other side where the shooter, what's her name? It starts with a T. The lady, the Game of Thrones lady. You can see that they're actually trapped between a mountain of the fuel and the cliff. So the stormtroopers are yelling, there's no way through, there's no way around, which I'm sure was like added in post that way to kind of double down on people saying like, oh, they literally can't get through this, you know, just to like, so you can see a little bit of the writer's intention there of like, they can't get through the fire, and that is what's happening. They had the stormtroopers say that. Okay. Number 4, if Vader tried to jump over the fire, he's leaving himself exposed to blaster fire to whoever was helping Obi-Wan in that moment. So again, this is a more specific thing, because people were like, well, what if he just pulled Vader to him, or what if he jumped over the fire, or what if he you know, pulled Obi-Wan over the fire, you know, etc., right? So this one is simply that, like, if he tries to physically jump over the fire, there's a shooter out there shooting. Can he deflect blaster bullets while he's jumping through the air to the other side? Yeah, maybe. But then he's separated from his troops, you know, and his ship's probably on the other side of the fire. He's going to have to jump over again while he's holding Obi-Wan. You know, it's a whole thing. It just doesn't make sense to try and do that. You know? Number 5. If Vader used the Force to pull Obi-Wan to him, it likely would have burned him further and killed him, which is not what Vader wants. Vader literally says in that scene, your suffering has only begun. So clearly he doesn't intend on him dying right away. He just pushed him out of the fire, probably because he knows, hey, I can't leave him in there too much longer, because then he literally will just die. He'll just burn to death. So I can't have him burn more, so I can't risk pulling him over the fire, especially if I'm going to start getting shot at by whoever's on that cliff over there. Okay? And number 5, number 6, Vader's suit is not fireproof, at least according to what we see in Return of the Jedi with his armor being burnt. So, you know, again, this is something where I had someone else on Twitter come out and say, well, in this comic book, they showed that Vader's armor can go in lava, which that's really cool, and that's part of canon, and we can acknowledge that, right? And again, this is another example of us as fans. You know, this is not supposed to just be us taking what we get from these shows and just absorbing it at face value. You know, we're supposed to be interacting with it. We're supposed to be like absorbing it, studying it, you know, and yeah, it's fun for people to break down and look for logical inconsistencies, but if that's all you're doing, are you really enjoying this content? If all you're doing is looking for holes that you can poke instead of like looking for ways that you can connect these things together, you know what I mean? So what I mean is, this comic book is canon, and it said, okay, Vader's suit is lava proof, and yet in Return of the Jedi we know his suit gets burnt because we see his melted mask in the sequel trilogy. So thus we have to imagine, we have to just guess, because that's the fun part of this, at some point he has fireproof armor, and at other points he doesn't, and he switches them who knows how often and who knows why or when or how, but he does switch his suits up, you know? Of course, the suit physically does look different between A New Hope and Empire, and a little bit in Return of the Jedi, I think, but you know, it's like another one of those things where it's like, hey, we can use our imagination and make those logical leaps and go like, okay, well, it's in the comic it's lava proof, but in Return of the Jedi it's clearly not lava proof because a normal fire, it starts melting in a normal fire, so, you know. So there's that, right? And I think that's all I'm saying, is that like nothing I've listed here is by any way like official. You know, we don't know what the writer intended for this scene unless they come out and talk about it, you know. All of this is, all the things that I've listed here is nothing more than just me as a fan saying, hey, here's something that I saw that a lot of people are asking questions about, and I admittedly was asking questions about it also, right? So it's like, what actually makes the most sense? What can I come up with my imagination and my engagement with this media You know, what can I come up with that works for me? You know, and I just gave you like a list of like 7 things and reasons why he wouldn't have done this, why he didn't do that, why this doesn't make sense, you know. And again, that's kind of the fun of it. You can disagree with me, obviously, you know. Hey, I'm probably wrong about a lot of this, but my point is that instead of just poking holes and not coming up with any solutions of our own, not coming up with any answers of our own, all we're doing here is hating things. You know what I mean? We're not having any kind of engagement or any fun of any kind. We're just stewing in our anger. How dare they write something that's not 100% bulletproof, you know? And which again is funny when we're talking about Star Wars, because if you're looking for, you know, 100% logical consistency with no holes in it, this is not the franchise for that. You can literally look at any movie, any TV show, and you can sit and say, why didn't they use the Force there? Why didn't they use the Force there? Why didn't they use the Force run? They never even brought that back. You know, why didn't they use the Force jump over there? They could have done that there very easily, can't they? You know, and it's like, because the story has to happen. 99.9% of the reason it's because the story has to happen. But that's not nearly as fun of an answer as trying to imagine the other possibilities. You know, and that's why when people complain about this fire scene in Kenobi or other scenes out there that like, hey, does this make 100% sense? And it's like, hey, maybe not. Maybe it is just what the writers needed to happen, and you can call that whatever name you want to call that. But instead of doing that, instead of trying to sit here and poke holes and being angry all day, why don't we try to engage with it? Why don't we try and take what we have and work with it? You know, try and say like, okay, how does this actually make sense? How can I fit this somewhere, you know? And again, I've just listed you like 7 ways this makes sense. So I guess that's all I'm trying to say, is that like people refuse to just engage with media anymore. You know, critiquing things and doing your CinemaSins like dings, you know, marking off your little points every time you see something that you feel doesn't entirely line up to logic. That's, where is that fun? Who is that fun for? You know? Anyways, this is just my little rant. It's just, I just wanted to give you guys an example of like, yeah, Star Wars has never been logically consistent. You can find 10 billion reasons, like The Mandalorian, for example. The Mandalorian introduced the idea of these bounty hunter pucks, which you only need like a certain amount of information in order to find your target. That's how they kept on finding Grogu over and over again, because they knew his age and they knew you know, his last known location, right? And it's like, okay, so any kind of instance ever in Star Wars, ever in the past 40 years, if they ever needed to find a character, all they needed was that information and a bounty hunter puck, and they could have found them. You see what I'm saying? So, and you could probably come up with 10 million different occasions when they were looking for someone, and then me as a viewer, sure, I could sit here and poke holes and be like, why didn't they use a bounty hunter puck? Because they didn't, god damn it. Why didn't they use Force Run? They only used that in Phantom Menace, and they never used Force Run ever again in any of the Clone Wars at all. Never, not a single instance of Force Run. Why? Because they just didn't. The story had to happen, okay? If they used the Force Run here, the episode would have ended at like the 8-minute mark, and that episode of Clone Wars would have been like really weird. Instead, they had a story to tell, and that's what I mean by like, story comes first, you know, and you engage with that story instead of just trying to poke holes in it, you know. And some people are going to take this and then go be like, oh, so you don't want us to criticize things? No, you can criticize things, of course you can, okay? But what I'm trying to say is there's more than one way to engage with something. You know, you can sit here and say, oh, I wish it all 100% made sense. He could jump over the fire or through the fire. He could pull Obi-Wan way over the fire. He could use the Force to do this, that, or the other thing. But again, it's like, okay, why don't we just take what we have and interact with that? You know, let's mull it over for a minute, you know? So I don't know. This is just my little rants. It's just, it's not aggravating. It's more kind of depressing when I see other fans who, you know, they probably watched some other YouTube video that was dinging CinemaSins type points off of Kenobi, going like, this logically doesn't make sense, and this logically, there's nothing logical about this goddamn universe. Okay, this is a fairy tale where shit just happens by pure coincidence, and in the third movie of a trilogy, you can be like, two of you were actually brother and sister the whole time. Crazy that that never came up before now. Make it work, you know? And so it's like, yeah, this doesn't make sense, guys. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And you know, and it's like, maybe the writer intended that, hey, the explosion is so big and Obi-Wan gets away so quickly that Vader can't react to it. And that's might be the answer. That might be it. But we're sitting here overthinking it so much with like, well, they didn't logically say this and Vader could logically do that, and you know, it's like, guys, what are you doing? Do you enjoy this? Are you having fun watching a Star Wars? Do you like Star Wars? Are you having fun watching the fairy tale unfold here? I don't know. I think my thing is, you know, so many people got so obsessed with like objective criticism. You know, it's got to be logically soundproof and all that, when it's like 99% of Star Wars is not logically soundproof. You know, if you want to sit here and poke holes all day and that's what you enjoy doing, okay, I guess. But that just seems like a really shitty way to try and be a fan of something to me. Anyways, this is just my long rants. Just think about it next time, you know? Next time something doesn't make sense, instead of calling it lazy writing or a plot hole, maybe just think about why else, other than those reasons, why else would this have happened? And you might enjoy some of the things that you come up with inside of your own brain. They might not be the official answer, and maybe you'll never get an official answer, but that's okay. You'll be fine. You can have fun. It's okay. You'll be all right. Anyways, I will see you guys next time.